Now today, we're going to see what are different methods that we can use to multiply any polynomials. Now know that there's two methods. First, we're going to introduce what's called the tabular method. Know that the tabular method consists of just creating boxes and multiplying the terms in order to find out what's inside those boxes that we're going to create. Now, it will not make a lot of sense right now, but let's do some examples. Now here, we got to see how many terms we have in each expression. We see that the first expression has one term, and we see that the second expression has two terms. So that means that we're going to be creating a box. We need to create it with dimensions 1 times 2. So what does that mean? We need to create a box that has one column and two rows, because we have one expression that has one term and we have another expression that has two terms. Now, in the perpendicular space, we're gonna put the expression that has one term, which in this case is 6b. On the other side of the box, we're gonna be putting 2b and a 3. So we have created our box. What we gotta do now is find out what goes inside those boxes. How do we do that? We're gonna multiply those two terms that make up that box. You see that in order for us to find this number, we need to multiply 2b times 6b. It gives me, so it gives me 12b squared. Now to find out what's inside this box, we need to figure out what's the multiplication of 3 times 6b, which gives me 18b. Now that we know what's inside those boxes, we're going to treat if there is anything that we can combine. There are no like terms, so that means that there's nothing to combine it with. So that means our final answer is just what we found previously, which is 12b squared plus 18b. Now, let's look at the next example here. Again, the first thing you want to do is see what are the dimensions of my box. What is the box that I need to create? So we're going to have the first term, or the first expression, has two terms. The second expression has two terms. So that means that we're going to be creating a 2 by 2 box. So now, let's create that box. Why do I have a 2 by 2? Because the first expression has 2n and a 2, and the second expression has a 6n and a 1. So now we create our box according to what we need to multiply. So now we need to figure out what goes inside this box. So let's figure it out. 6n times 2n. Well, we gotta remember, number times number, letter times letter. So 6 times 2, that's 12. N times n, that's n squared. So what goes in the other box? 6n times 2. So 6 times 2, that's 12. Oops. And n. There's nothing to multiply the letter with. So now, what goes inside this box is 1 times 2n, which is 2n. What goes in this box is 2 times 1, which is just 2. So we just figured out what goes inside this box. The last thing that we gotta do is combine any like terms. Now, how I do it, I go from highest exponent to lowest exponent. The highest exponent in this whole box is 2, exponent 2. Is there any other n squared that I can combine this 12n with? No, there's not. So we just write as our final answer. So that's done. Now, we see that I can combine these two n's, 12n and 2n. If I decide to combine these two, and I can combine it because both of them have n's, so now we're going to have 12n plus 2n, that gives me 14n. There's nothing to combine that 2 with, so I just write as our final answer. So the strategy here is just to create the box, find the numbers inside the box by multiplying its edges. So let's look at the next example here again. We have what's going to be our dimension? Well, it's going to be 1. The first expression has one term. The second expression has two terms, so we're going to create a 1 by 2 box. where the first term is right here, because there's only space for 1, and the second term, negative 5b, oops, that's ugly, oops, negative 5b, and negative 8. So now we figure out what's that number. How do we figure out the number inside? Well, we multiply its edges, negative 5b times 7. Well, you gotta multiply numbers with numbers, letters with letters. So negative 5 times 7, that's 35. And we gotta bring down to b. Now 8 times 7, figure it out. So 8 times negative 7, oops, I'll get 7 times negative 8. So we got negative 56. So now that we figured out the insides, we gotta ask, well, is there anything that I can combine any numbers with? Nope, there's no like terms. It has a b, it's a solid number, so we just write it as our final answer. And that's pretty much it. Again, all we gotta do here is just create the box according to our dimensions, and then we're gonna need to figure out what goes inside those boxes. Now, the second method that I want to discuss is the method that you're more familiar with, which is distribution, or you might learn it as FOIL. What's wrong with this pen? FOIL. I don't want you to learn as FOIL, just learn as distribution. So let's call it as it is, distribution. So just like the name says it, it's distribution. So how are we going to multiply? By distributing. So see, like here, the first expression that we need to multiply has 2 terms. The second expression that I need to multiply by has 2 other terms. So now, what does distribution consist of? You're going to get the first term, and you need to distribute equally to the other 2 terms. But we're going to do it one at a time. So again, I'm going to look at the first term, and I'm going to distribute. So we multiply 4n times 2n, 4 times 2, that's 8, n times n, that's n squared. Oh, let me write these things in the box, I feel it might be confusing. Now that we've done distributing the first one, we need to distribute the second. So 4n times 6, that gives me 62, so that's 24. 24n. Now that you're done distribute that 4n, we need to distribute the other term equally to the other 2 terms. So 1 times 2n, that gives me 2n. And 1 times 6, that gives me 6. Now, this is our result after the multiplication. So what you gotta do last is just combine any like terms. We see that I cannot combine the n squared with anything, so rewrite it. I see that I can combine these 2 n's. So I get to 26n, and I can combine that 6 with nothing, so brings it down as an answer. So again, all we do is just distribute and combine like terms. That's all we're doing here. So here, again, like that we only have 1 term, and the other expression has 2 terms, so I need to distribute that equally. So let's distribute 7 is negative 5, b, so 7 times negative 5, that's negative 35, and we bring that to b. Now 7 times negative 8, which we find it to be 56, negative 56. Now we ask, well, is there anything that I can combine this with? No, there's not. So that means that this is our final answer. Now the last example here, we're gonna distribute again, and again you gotta distribute equally. So we see that we have 2 terms on the left, 2 terms on the right. So we distribute here equally this 3n. Let's distribute with this 8n for am first. So let's see, numbers with numbers, letter with letter. So 8 times 3 gives me 24. So we're gonna have 24 m times m squared. We need to distribute that again, but now we're going to distribute to the other term, which is 7. So 7 times 3, 7, 7 son 14, 7, 7. So that's 21. 21m. We're done distributing the first term, so we gotta distribute the other. So negative 1 times am, that's negative am. Negative 1 times positive 7, that's negative 7. So again, we have the following. We need to see, is there any like terms that I can combine? Let me rewrite this too. Just does not look right. So now, let's see. Is there any terms that I can combine with? Well, let's go from highest exponent to lowest. There's nothing I can combine this m squared with, so I'll just rewrite it. I can combine these two m's. 21 minus 8. Let's figure that out. So 21 minus 8. So we got positive 13. M. There's nothing to combine to 7, so bring it down as our final answer. And there it is. That's your final answer.